No, it's not.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to call to order this Board of Johnson County Commissioners Special Meeting, ARPA Committee, on this Tuesday, May 17th, 2022 at 10 o'clock a.m. Thank you for coming, those who are here. First on the agenda is approval of funding for schematic design plans for highway property. And I'm sure we need some discussion on that.
Yep, we can. Our initial intent was set up with the health department and the coroner's office to put the property on the Drake Road property, put the buildings up there. We had pushed the architect to get drawings done for that. And at that point, we stopped and wanted to take a look at redoing the whole highway campus. We have the drawings. That cost, I believe, is $51,000 that we have into the architect already. And I guess I would ask this committee if you're willing to pay that $51,000 out of this for that property and that process that we're in right now. That's where we're at. And it's on hold right now. We still have the drawings, so those drawings can be used to put on another location if it is so chosen at a later date. So that's where I'm at.
I think, didn't you guys approve the 51 for the Drake Road already?
I don't know if we have.
I
have
think
we?
you did. I thought
We did up
Okay,
to
then that's fine.
100,000, wasn't it?
Yes, there's 100,000
professional services.
That we appropriated for that? Okay,
Yes, sir.
well, then we'll talk about the highway campus. Thank you. That was easy.
Yeah.
The highway campus, we did some preliminary studies, Wes and I have. And do you want to talk about total money, or do you want to talk about buildings being put on there, or budgetary? What do you want to talk about? And then we'll lead into it from there.
Gentlemen, anything?
It's all up for discussion.
Or are you talking about an over $30,000 foot view of the campus? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
So a primary layout that isn't any detail on structures, just how it could go.
We didn't really do a preliminary layout. What we had done is just put dollars to square footage on buildings that we associated. We had looking at probation, the health department, coroner's office, community corrections building. I think those were the only ones. We talked about maybe a court going in over there too.
And
Also.
the probation.
Probation, yeah, adult probation.
And is that also including looking at remediation issues?
We put some money in for that, but hopefully you won't know until you get into it. That's a lot of this is speculatory right now. So,
And
relocating highway,
and that's at what amount expected for a preliminary?
just a little under 50 million.
No, I mean the cost for the layout.
Schematic design.
That is nothing. That's Wes and I are doing that. As far as budgetary,
For
Yes.
this, approval of funding for
this, yeah.
designs.
that I don't know where I'd begin with that one. I really don't, to be honest with you.
I assume once you put everything together, though, you'll come back with something that we can look at.
If this
for
board so
schematic
chooses,
design.
I can go get that dollar amount, but it's going to have to be working with an architect, engineering firms, and I wouldn't even care to guess at that right now.
And that's really not an ARPA consideration, is it, at this point? Or is it?
Some of it can be, and I think some of it can't be. So the percentages are going to weigh different things on that. What would qualify under that, Shana? You would have,
Well, I mean, if you're talking about just getting the project kind of off the ground with the schematic design, that would come out of your 10 million discretionary. And then as the project continues, we would have to assess what could be paid out of the other 20 million versus 10 million.
Yes,
Wes Harris, like I mentioned at the last meeting, when we were talking about the highway department, and he and I were kind of talking, and he said he estimated between 25,000 and 30,000 possibly for the schematic design.
I hadn't heard that, so
I hadn't either. So,
it must be confidential with you on that. I'm kidding. No, I hadn't heard that figure.
So the roughly $50 million number you mentioned, is that an estimate for the buildings
And
on
we-
that site?
Yes,
So have we have any numbers on what it's going to cost to relocate the highway department? In other words, land acquisition of buildings they're going to do, all of that's got to be in conjunction with.
we budgeted,
this.
we budgeted money for that. Like I said, just arbitrarily, we put dollar amounts on that to relocate highway
And those are,
in that
Yeah,
number.
we received those figures last.
they're in the 50
meeting.
million?
Mhm.
Highway Department relocation, according to Mr. Henderson's paperwork, was 10,660,000 contingency, April 25th, 2022. And 11,726,000. So it
7
was,
million?
yeah, with the 10% contingency, $11,726,000.
I know we're not there yet, as far as design or whatever, but something I'd like for us to consider is collaborative effort with some other communities like Franklin and Greenwood on the highway department, maybe with some satellite locations and some salt and sand storage types of situations. And I just wanted to throw that out there.
Okay. I had reached out to Mayor Barnett and let him know that we were processing some ideas and asked him if he could maybe put a feeler out for some properties in the Franklin area that might be available. And I think he was going to kind of check into that, but we probably need to hire someone to look, I would think.
Luke, excuse me, Luke was talking about the collaboration with the state, but then they wanted it either 69 or near 69 or near 65, but perhaps revisiting that with them, which what's more central makes more sense to us, but doesn't mean to mean more sense to the state. But a central location where they could collaborate with us in the middle, then they could get to both of them. I don't know if he's re-exploring that or not. That was one of the discussions he had mentioned was the state. And they thought they weren't interested because it wasn't near 69 or it wasn't near 65, but if it's in the middle, that makes more sense, you would think.
The deal with the state gets pretty complicated. I told them that we would build them a facility and they could lease from us, and they weren't interested in that. And then they also said they would build a building and we could lease from them, and I said, I'm not interested in that. So we talked about zero lot lines. We talked about a lot of different things with the state, and I mean, I can still reinvigorate those talks if you want me to, but it was kind of it was difficult. There wasn't a clear path on that.
I think looking at it as a collaboration, right now the state police has a helicopter hangar out at Greenwood Airport. So the state is already collaborating in a certain extent to the county. So I would think they would entertain that. It'd give them some multiple locations possibly. And then also, we could maybe do some things with the sheriff's departments or the fire departments in that regard also in those same locations. So
With some of these negotiations, you got to keep in mind, the fuel stations that we have right now serves Franklin, Access, serves some other entities. With location being here in Franklin, which is convenient for them. If this board really wants to look at it, you're almost going to have to look at 2 fueling stations because our highway department uses so much fuel, it's non-productive for them to go to a normal fuel station to fuel. So if you move that location out of Franklin, these are some of the demographics you have to work with. If you move it out of Franklin and try to collaborate with the state at a later date, you're going to have 2 fuel stations you're going to have to put in.
what I
One
was thinking was we just don't look at it as one entity or one location or one structure, that we just look at like a satellite type of situation. But, multiple locations for fueling, like at the four corners of the county. So I'm just trying to think what would be beneficial to us to save us on fuel and,
Centrally located would save our entity, the county, money just because of with salt service work that we do up in the northern part of the county. They're driving back and forth. So
okay.
it would be more efficient if we put it more centrally located, yes. But then we would take it out of the Franklin area.
This might be out of the ordinary, but they won't lease from us and we won't lease for them. So why don't we have a third party and we both lease from the third party consideration?
Not interested.
Well,
Me personally, I'm not interested in that.
Well, I mean,
so I don't
it's
know.
it's a way to, consider.
I mean, everything's up for discussion.
But I'm all for the cost associated with the schematic design.
Okay.
And the other thing we need to consider, gentlemen, is the gas or the fueling station is going to need some updating anyway. So there's going to be cost in that we're probably not going to have to do if we would move it, because we would be a new facility at that point. But the other thing we need to consider is that is a county fueling station for our county.
Yeah, what's lost?
And we have allowed other entities such as the City of Franklin Fire Department, Police Station, Access Johnson County, Senior Services use that facility. But in my opinion, I kind of agree with Kevin. If I'm going to think about the fueling station, I'm thinking about that for the entity that we use it for, and that's the highway department, because it's a loser for us everywhere else. It's actually costing us money to sell to these other entities. So, which has been a discussion that has come up, and I'm working with the fleet manager right now and putting costs together on how much it's going to take as a surcharge per gallon to get us to where we're at least breaking even, because there's no reason for us to be losing money selling to these other entities. So that's kind of a sore subject right now because of everything that's going on. So but I think we need to keep in mind that as this committee, that station is really for those entities right now. And we need to consider that in any location that we would choose money wise. It's not fair for the Johnson County taxpayers as a whole to be paying for those other entities that don't use them.
I make a suggestion.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead, Rob.
So my thought, looking back to the April 25th, 2022 numbers that were estimated by Kevin and Wes, and understanding their estimates, I think for me, where it comes down is the structures, the to be constructed items or projects on the potential site, right? You've got a mental health facility, treatment, transitional housing estimated at 6 million. I think we were going to look into whether that is ARPA in one of the regulatory buckets, or whether that was potentially under the correctional facilities and rehab facilities, i.e. the jail lit. We were going to look at community corrections. We know that's correctional and that's approved. The health clinic, is that ARPA or not? Because you start looking at a $49 million estimate with including adult probation, 40 million without adult probation. If we can peel these off, right, and attack them with other buckets of money that we have within prescribed purposes, this project becomes, to me, much more feasible and more forward thinking for our community. And I would be fine to invest 25 or 30,000 in schematic drawings to make that site either it's feasible or not feasible. And then we go from there. So I'm not sure where we are on those questions or answers, or where we are on the answers to those questions, but that was what I thought we left this committee with. Let's find out if those end uses can be funded alternatively through those items. And then if yes, we can have better knowledge to move forward, or if no, then maybe this relocation is a done deal, and it's a dead deal in the sense that it's not viable. So I feel like that is
The 25 to 30,000 is the big question right now.
Yeah.
Do we move forward with that?
Well, and is with that concept in mind that Rob's talking about, though, is that enough money to cover moving forward in that area? The bottom line is I can't make that determination. I don't think you can either, as far as the location, what we can peel out, peel in. I think we would need some help in hiring someone to come up with that information. I wouldn't know how to do it.
Baker Tilly, maybe.
Just, yeah, I don't know. I think we need to
We've got
research
them under
somebody to
contract
hire.
anyway. They can more solidify that for us, I think.
That's above my pay grade.
What did you say, Shane?
Nothing.
What do you want? Is that what you said?
No, I said for which part. I was asking Commissioner Walls a question.
So. I guess, I mean, to stay focused on this meeting, that's what happened last meeting. We got way off track and we were headed down that path again. I think I would just like to look back at the approval for funding for the $25,000 to $30,000 for schematic design. That would, I think, just to refocus it back onto that issue, and until we get that, then we can't answer any more of the questions because we won't have the feasibility that Rob's looking at. They should be able to nail some of this down for us and get better numbers. Because right now I'm not going to get with everybody because I don't know the specifics yet. So that's where I'm staying right now.
I'm almost the other way around. I kind of want to know before I say yes to
What,
investing in schematic drawings, can these other, because without knowing a funding source for the health clinic, community corrections, mental health facility, and we're looking at a $40 to $49 million number out there, I don't want to put 25,000 out for schematics. To me, I think we get an opinion from a Baker Tilly or DLGF or somebody about can within a reason, right? There are going to be some assumptions in this, but can ARPA and or our jail lit be used to construct and operate a mental health facility, treatment, transitional housing? Yes, no, maybe if it does this. And that's where I thought we left this
Your
last time.
correctional and rehabilitation lit, your jail lit, as we always refer to it.
Right.
We've talked about using that for community corrections before, and I
Correct.
think that's reasonable, depending on how much of your mental health program ends up being rehabilitation. That could also qualify for that. As far as the ARPA funds, you have the 10 million, you can spend on whatever you
Right.
want. You got the 20 million, that's where the mental health lies in that 20 million part.
Yeah.
So I think it's a combination of all those sources that gets you somewhere.
Yeah.
At least, I don't know if it gets you all the way there.
No, I follow that. I completely follow that. I think
Where's the gap?
the gap is mental health facilities / treatment / transitional housing.
Mhm.
Is that 100% ARPA and or jail lit, or is it a 50-50? Is it? And that's where,
Well, and it depends on what it ends up looking like.
I know,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
that's
I
what,
think it's likely that you can pay for all of that with ARPA. I think very likely. Now, as far as paying for just a rehab, whatever would be associated with rehab with the jail lit would be a little pickier. So we'd have to look at that.
health clinic, ARPA,
Health clinic.
is it in that
if
regulatory
it's,
bucket?
if it's designed to respond to the public health emergency, then yes, it would be in the 20 million.
Which it would be, I would
See,
assume we would do that.
That to me it says, yes, we have some ability, right? We've seen some illustrations on the jail lit and where that balance can grow. I'm sorry, my back is to you folks. It's
That's all right.
not intended. It's just we've seen where that balance can grow over the next 10 years. That sunset period we initially thought was 20 years was extended by an additional 2 years. So that bucket should continue to grow. And it's restricted. So let's find ways to use it for those restricted purposes. And I think it sounds like we can do that along with ARPA should get us well into the covering the $40 to $49 million. So if that's what I'm hearing, that we think we're good on that, then I'm willing to say yes to allowing this council or this whatever to say invest up to 30,000 on schematics. But if I'm not hearing it correctly, or if there's any doubt, then I don't want to put $30,000 out. That's where I'm at.
And that was kind of my, I guess, concern and question is do we need someone? Are you confident in that, Sheena? I know you know a lot about this stuff that I don't know, or are you confident
Well,
in
it's
those?
just, it's gonna depend on what it ends up looking like.
Okay.
That's what I keep going back to, because you have to be able to justify it within the language of ARPA. And if for some reason we get off the rails and it ends up being a swimming pool or something, then obviously it's not gonna work out. And that's an extreme, but
No, I think if we get it off the rails that far, we need to let it get.
Well, you know, I could see it.
And
It's
I'm
like, oh,
ready.
it's a wellness center. You could, I mean, that's,
No,
but you know what I
yeah,
mean.
Yeah, I
it'd
get
be
you.
harder to relate back to that $20 million.
Right. That makes sense.
I mean, I think the health meets the public requirement that they've got in ARPA. The health clinic would.
I think so, yeah.
I
I think
That's where
That's the
the.
thing, I mean, yeah,
Go ahead, Betsy.
go ahead. Betsy.
Come on up here. Can you come up here? Because we'll have to record this.
So thanks.
Betsy Swearingen, Director of the Health Department, I just wanted some clarification on this health clinic. Is that the health department or a privately owned health clinic?
I would say both.
You talking about employee health clinic,
Yes.
yeah, an employee health clinic.
Right, but run by the health department
Yes.
in the county or run by another organization?
I believe in Greenwood, Greenwood pays for it, but it's done by a private.
It's run through it's a Franciscan employee,
Right.
right? So I guess that's my question is, would the health department be located in this with this, or would it just be the healthcare clinic?
No, I think in our original discussion, it was part of the health department facility is what I understood. And it would be a small area for the health clinic, like the school has, like Greenwood has.
Right, that's when we were talking about the Drake Road project, but it's since that one's been scratched completely.
The plans are still there, Betsy. We can take that building and put it someplace else.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, just a question.
I think
Thank you.
that's probably one of those yet to be determined as far as how that's set up. But I mean, I think the general idea of the building design we had before probably is going to fit that.
Okay.
If that helps. That helps.
Thank you.
Maybe
It
a
doesn't
third-
help me. I hope it helped you.
maybe a third story for expansion.
I guess that would be the question that I would have down Rob's lines. The clinic, does it qualify under discretionary or non-discretionary? And then the health department, where would that classify at discretionary or non-discretionary?
I can see that you're not satisfied with my response, so we can reach
Take
out.
think out of it and we'll
We
be good.
can reach out. I mean, my answer is always, it depends. And say, I want a health building. Okay, great. What's that gonna include? Until we know exactly what it's gonna include, I'm
This
not
would-
gonna say, oh, that goes there, that goes there, that goes there, because I don't know what's in the building.
This would be an actual clinic for the county employees, and this would also be the health department in general. For both those entities. That's, I guess, the clarification between the two is.
Part of that's public, part of that's private, I guess. in some
And these
sense.
clinics that for people to make sure they don't blow it up, it's usually just one room with an exam table that, you know, they have a nurse or whatever, and then you go in there and, or a nurse practitioner. It's not a huge facility.
Yeah, the original building design had 3 exam rooms.
Well, yeah,
So
that may be
Which
overkill.
some of that can be for public to use, but that's what I'm saying. I think it's going to be kind of the health department working with maybe
Well,
doctor or nurses or whatever
Sure.
from other entities.
That's
If
outside
it-
entity.
If it is to meet the ARPA and for justification purposes, it's always the health department that responds to the public health emergency.
Right.
You're very rarely ever going to get a private entity that responds to something like that. The only reason we ever went into JMH for that clinic was because the health department staffed it. And yes, it was located there, but it was a joint effort, mostly run through the health department for the response.
And I think that's what we're seeing. I mean, I think that's my concept is that it's under the health department, but we're going to have to hire some other people for the clinic and things like that.
Right,
agree.
well, I think in
Or
the,
use another entity a third party to do
right,
that.
how Greenwoods works is she works 2 days a week and is in there for that portion of the time, but they don't do anything else with that clinic other than the time. We still, at the health department, have to have an immunization clinic on a daily basis for childhood and adult vaccinations. So that's always going to be there, and that always meets the requirement for response to potential
Right.
public health
And I think
emergencies.
that's why we designed the 3 exam rooms
Right.
originally, was it not? Okay.
Right.
That's for clarification. Thank you.
Right.
That's why it was set up like that.
That's what I thought. We're back to the question because we got to move on. Anyone want to make a motion on anything?
I make a motion to approve the $25,000 to $30,000 expenditure for schematic designs for where the new campus is not the highway campus. The highway would be leaving.
Yeah, I'll second that for the,
Do we want to say the 30,000?
I'll say not to exceed $30,000.
Whatever that
Amend your
figure.
motion to say that.
I thought somebody said 25 to 30 to 30.
Not to exceed 30.
Not to exceed
Not to exceed
The
30,000.
motion is not to exceed 30. And the second is to not to exceed 30. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
We have one opposed for record. Next,
Let me tell you the reason for my opposition. As most all of you know, I think kind of linearly, numerically. I like numbers attached to whatever we're going to do. Without numbers, you can't really make an appropriate decision. And I've heard, since I've said here, anything from 11,726,000 up to 49 or 50 million, down to 30, maybe 25. I don't even have any concept of where we're at financially on these entities that you're proposing. And nothing in relation to how you're going to finance the ongoing portions of those operations and the costs involved in that. This is all over the board. If you're going to make a presentation where you're going to have specifics, then you should have numbers attached to it. If you can't attach numbers, then how can you vote for something that's peripheral? It's just out there in the cloud. And that's my opposition to it. I just continue to hear numbers. I got no concept on, I've been sitting here all listening to all of this. And if somebody asked me to brief them on what we're doing, I couldn't tell them.
Ron, with respect, I mean, there were numbers shared with us at one of our more recent meetings. This is dated April 25th. It breaks out, everything which was just talked about today has been broken out as an estimate with a range, including contingency. The operation thereof is what I'm also concerned with. But I'm also pretty confident that at least two of these new facilities that we're contemplating can be operated with funds out of what we call the criminal justice lit. We always forget or fail to add the rehab part of that, but it is very clear that correctional and rehabilitation facilities qualify for operational expenditures. So when we're looking at this now, highway department goes away. That's a bogey. That's what we're trying to figure out. It's about an $11 million bogey right now. Right? So that might be some of the discretionary. Health clinic, if we expand it to include the health department and also a footnote here from the last meeting, maybe coroner's office. That's 12,000 square feet to encompass potentially all of those offices, which could be ARPA. We just talked about that. We feel pretty confident about that. Community corrections, we are 100% confident can come out of criminal justice or the correctional jail lit, construction and operation thereof. The last facility talked about is the mental health facility / treatment / transitional housing, estimated at $6 million, which we're fairly confident construction and or operation or both can be funded out of the criminal justice lit plus ARPA money. So I think we have gone a long way to lay this out. And I don't know, this may not have been in your inbox or whatever, but it was made available to the members that attended that meeting. And so I feel like there is ample data, at least to make the decision today to say, yes, now the next step is to go and spend money with schematic design so we can truly determine whether the site is viable or not viable for these purposes, the purposes of which have been identified and possibly already funding sources identified. So I don't like the numbers, right? The numbers are large, but that's also a function of them being conservative estimates at this point in time. So I feel like we've done our part to make a decision to get to this point. So I appreciate your no,
Yeah.
but you can never have firm numbers, Ron, until you even know if you got a viable site, and you're going to have to put a little money in that to make that determination.
And I bet, even in your rebuttal there, you used the word potentially. Fairly. I mean, those potentially and fairly, and we all know dealing in government money, tax dollars, that if you can't be certain of the operational costs covering those in a foregoing effort, you know, you don't want to build a building and we'll just use the mental health as an example. If you don't have a number on what it's going to cost to operate that, and I understand what you're saying with the lit, but we're also discussing the lit potential for highway use also. And those things are going to compound each other as that becomes more of an issue. And when it gets down to a vote, where are you going to go? I just like to see some numbers attached to these, not just the brick and mortar. I mean, that's pretty easy to just come up with a square footage. You know, we got 10,000 square foot, it's $400 a square foot. But there's got to be some other costs associated with all these things. Just like I said with the highway department, you know, where's it going to go? How much acreage does it take? If you're going to do a campus out there, you got to have those numbers too, I would think, for me. That's just me, but I appreciate what you said.
But I don't think we can get to those numbers
Yeah.
unless we have some kind of design to get us to be able to look at those numbers. That's like building a scaffold, but you can't have workers on the job site. How do you build a scaffold if you don't have workers on the job site? I mean, it just, what this is trying to make sense out of what we're planning. And I don't think that's a misuse of funds to do that. I think that is a good use of funds to do that. So we know what we're doing. And we don't know that yet, Ron, but we do have a very good breakdown that I thought was done very well. That was, I don't have my copy with me. Thank you for bringing yours, Rob, but that was discussed and a lot of good discussion and a breakdown on that, sir. So,
And I would agree with Ron wholeheartedly, and I think every one of us here does. The thing that complicates this is that the dollar amount has been set for ARPA. I mean, we've been given the amount. We've been told what it can be used for. So in essence, everything is backwards. Usually you start out with a need and then you go through a series of programming and determine what the use is working with the users. But we're backwards here. We have to establish a limit within the guidelines of the ARPA funding. So I think we're just, I think we're doing the best we can. I think Rob's doing a good job of putting these numbers to this. And have you seen that?
No.
Ron? Okay. So I think that will help out a great deal.
And bring us back to the focus.
I don't know if it was emailed or, no, it was.
No, Rob presented it that day.
He
Bringing us
I
back,
didn't present this. No, Kevin presented that.
bringing us back to the focus of today, that is the mental health of all those operational things. The only thing that's not currently in action, as I understand it, would be the mental health arm of it. All the others are all current operational operations that are in place. The health department, the community corrections, the probation, everything's in place that is going to go into the brick and mortars except for the mental health. And one of the discussions I hope we'll have today, or in a follow-up meeting if it's necessary, is what other additional resources were going to come from outside of the county, which was the doctor that was supposed to be here, about possible funding. Is that part of what we're going to discuss today, of where this other monies might come from, as far as the beds and the rehab, the people who would be staffing that, which is part of what Ron's talking about. So I'd like for us to get back on focus to that, because we only got, I don't know how long we're going to meet today, but we're
11:30 approximately, 11:30, 11:45.
I suggest we move forward on that.
Well, we have to go to number 2 first on the agenda, which is approval of funding for the I-69 casing pipe.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Then we'll get there.
I move to approve that. Unless you want to have a discussion on it.
I don't know what it is.
Why, yeah, I don't, using your logic, Ron, I don't know.
That's why we have it. That's why we have it as number 2.
What kind of pipe?
Does this have anything to do?
That was the whole purpose of making a motion, is to get you to listen what I said earlier.
This is a sleeve under I-69 from the east to the west that is in conjunction with NDOT that we discussed with them to sleeve underneath there, and it would be our, I guess it would become proprietary to the county of who comes through that to interconnect utilities, data, anything that goes through there.
And we're gonna need that. So
Yeah, you've
if
got
we can
So
do
is
it
this
under the ARPA
120 inch reinforced concrete pipe or what?
It says 30 something.
36, I think it's 36.
36.
I only
yeah.
printed off
36
the
inch.
page that had the number on it, because that's what I thought you'd want to know.
It's 488,
466.
466 is better. It's 20.
And that is, how is that ARPA?
Drainage and utility.
It's in your lost revenue bucket.
All right, so is
It's
this
the
in
10
our,
million.
so now we really chipped away at our 10 million. I think we need to go back and reassess. Those numbers have all changed from our initial discussion several meetings ago about what could come out of the 10 million. Now it's another 500,000 that wasn't in there. If I'm understanding what this one, 26/2022. Where we began the discussion, and that one was not in
The
there.
lost revenue section of the 10 million, out of 10 million. Yeah. It doesn't have water. It doesn't. Wow. I thought I had wires and stuff.
That was the one with JC
was
Fiber.
fiber.
Drainage, if you got
That was
drainage,
fiber
you
optics.
can use the 20.
We had legal drains, which
Utility,
For like,
but you could use it
Wires.
for drainage.
That'll be more depending on which pot it comes out of.
yeah, I mean, yeah, right, you're right. I assume that it's gonna come out of the 10 million, because I didn't think it had anything to do with water.
So what's this amount?
$466,000. $14.10. 466,014.10.
So we need to put something else together.
under discretionary.
I'm not 100% sure which pot it's gonna come out of, because there's gonna be multiple uses of that pipe.
Can you use it for drainage and utilities?
Mhm. I mean, there's that I can't answer, because I know we're just putting it in, we're gonna use it for multiple different things. I don't want two pots it can come out of. I thought it came
Is
non-discretionary.
I'm sorry. I was just trying to get some reason.
is 36 inches, was that recommended by an engineer? Is that a standard
Yeah. that's-
size? Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any benefit to a larger casing pipe that would,
Too late.
Done deal.
And it had to be, it's in a, there was just a lot of work that went into that, because they had to pump that whole site out, because it was, high water table there.
I know a lot of thoughts going into this, so I hate to add something here, but couldn't we just like lay some conduit across there, some empty conduit and dead ended in some for some future use? No. okay.
I don't know if this helps. It's a 30-inch HDPE casing pipe. Does that mean
Yeah.
anything to anyone?
Yeah,
Okay, rather than us discussing whether it should be 30 inch or 120 inch, I'm going back to the issue of this is a discretionary fund spend. That very first meeting, Commissioner Baird put together a list of suggestions of what we might spend under discretionary funds. And that wasn't in there at all. So are we now reprioritizing what was on that list dated 2/16?
Well, that really wasn't a prioritization list. That was basically just some ideas I had. So, and we didn't have anything else, so I brought them.
Well, which at our last meeting, and I'd just like before we end this meeting today to point out that we've not had any discussion about other suggestions of how the 20 million could be spent, because we ended up going down the road about the relocation. So that is a point for a future meeting. But I'm simply saying, when all of a sudden we've got a 500,000, then we had animal control, and we had Nineveh Park, we had stipends. So, this is a new one, is all I'm getting at, that sort of
And I don't
changes the
think
list. I'm not saying that's an exclusive list.
most of those aren't relevant at this point. Now, anyway, because some of those are projects that probably won't happen. So I think this would really be more of just a new item that has come up that needs to be looked at more than it would be to try to say it belongs on a certain list.
But there are other.
Because this
potential-
list as it is, isn't going to happen anyway. That one from February 16th, that list, most of that's not going to happen probably. At this point, I mean, they were just suggestions or ideas that I had, but I think the issue we have on the table is we have an item that's needed to be done that ARPA funds could be used for in one fashion or another, or a
Yes.
combination of both. And is there anyone, or is there a motion to say, yes, we want to do that we can put on the table so we can move forward?
Ron's already made a motion. I think we're
Did
just
you
in
motion?
discussion time.
Okay, well, we shouldn't be in discussion until we get a
I
second.
get a
so-
second then. You'll get a second from me.
Okay, I have a motion and a second.
Now we can go back to
To put
discussion.
this case piping in, so now we can go back to discussion.
This is going to benefit the county in the
Yep.
long run.
Okay,
It
if
very
not-
much is. I consider we can debate about this all day long, but in the long run, we made a decision in conjunction with NDOT and the highway department that this is going to benefit the residents up in that area, the businesses that are coming in. So we're not held hostage down the road by multiple utility people that want to come through our location instead of us having to go through their proprietary stuff. And if you've not gone down that road with them, that's a very, very dangerous road to go down with them.
My question is, if not for ARPA, how would it be funded?
We'll come to council for an appropriation out of general fund or Q cap. one or the other.
I don't think it's going to miss funding in the ARPA funds, though, whether through partially regulatory or partially discretionary. I think it's a fundable item through one or a combination of both. It's just, the question would be, and the only question should be is do we have the $466,000 to spend on that? And I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, my question is it a regulatory? does
We
it have
don't
to come
know.
out
It
of-
can be a combination of both, might be one or the other. What I'm trying to say, Ron, that's not the issue. The issue is do we have the $466,000 that the committee thinks this is a worthwhile expense on that's needed for that I-69 thoroughfare.
Yeah, I'm not questioning the need for it. I'm simply saying if that takes 466 out of discretionary.
It's going to be either combination or one or the other. That's all I can answer. We don't know that yet till we find out
I don't know what goes in that pipe.
till we, what's determined is what is that
I thought
pipe
it
going to be
did.
used for
No,
down the road by those residents that are affected by I-69, and basically. We won't know that until that. It could be used for partial drainage, could be used for utilities, could be used for both. And it's
Okay,
just,
so my bigger picture, and so we can move on to mental health, my bigger picture on this is that still having discussion about chipping away at the discretionary without having suggestions of what the other discretionary expenditures might be.
those will be on another agenda for another time. So it's the only way we can do it. We gotta stay focused or we'll never get any of this done. So anyway, with that said, I don't mean to be rude, but we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nick,
We have one opposed. Okay. And I know
The audience is
this was something that was thrown on the agenda, but it's two things that need to be taken care of. I apologize to those that are here and waiting for this other discussions of projects related to mental health. Now go for it.
I'm just going to say that we put out a budget number on this sheet of $6 million for mental health. And now we can open up discussions. I think we have a lot of people here in the audience that would like to talk about this and the need for this. And this would qualify under the non-discretionary or the discretionary, wouldn't it?
This is in the,
Non-discretionary.
it's in the regulatory.
Yeah,
Part.
regulatory,
Mhm.
whatever you want to call it.
It responds directly to the COVID-19 health emergency.
So
this is definitely under regulatory, and we're
Yes.
confident in that, so we can move forward with that.
There's one
in
definitive.
mind.
John, do you want to kick it off? I mean, this can go, I mean, you have a lot of people concerned, I know, here in the audience about it.
The only thing I would ask is if we have anyone come to speak, please keep it to 5 minutes or less.
So,
Could we start off with CIT?
well,
Or do you want to start off just by discussing?
why don't we do this? I
Okay.
would like to, what I'm going to ask this board is for $6 million of regulatory
Here's-
funding to put the facility up.
Okay,
And then we can have some discussions, or we won't have a second.
yeah, and this is where we get back to where you were, Ron. It's hard. Again, we're working backwards, but here's what I see is happening for mental health. Right now, we have a good program that we started through some funds called the CIT, which is the Crisis Intervention Team. And they respond to people that are in crisis. But right now in the county, we don't have any place to take them. In fact, a lot of times what happens through the process is we end up shipping them out of the county because we have no beds here for someone that's in mental health crisis. They usually end up going to Bloomington or to Columbus or to Community North in Indianapolis. So we have a great need, and when these ARPA funds present us with a niche to put these funds where we can help the people in our community for whatever reason that they're in crisis. And there are many, many things that can create those crises regarding mental health or addiction, substance abuse, alcoholism. So what I foresee this facility being is, and it's been said by others, a one-stop shop for those in crisis. I think it's something that we can do for our community that's going to help us on almost every level of health and in some respects law enforcement. Because right now we're putting people in jail a lot of times that have mental health issues. Now, that's not to say that they have not committed a criminal act, but still they are in great need of having a mental health evaluation, which we really don't have right now. So if we have a great percentage of people that are in our systems right now that are in the jails that have mental health issues, they're coming out of prison to our community corrections facility, and they're in great need of mental health services. And then we also have the need for somebody that hasn't created a criminal act for them to be taken somewhere so they can be assessed. And then some other things happening down the road where they're treated. So I believe this assessment facility should be not only, it shouldn't be freestanding by itself. It should be a part of the community corrections. It should be part of the jail. And it should be part of the health department. Let's leave it there. But I don't think 6 million or that number is enough, because I think in conjunction with the lit for the community corrections, and then a greater number for the mental health aspect of this. And this number wouldn't be for and it's hard to put, a square footage to this right now, because it needs to be within all of those entities. But I do think that there needs to be a greater need for space. And then, Ron, to answer your question about future, I think that along with some of the people we've been talking to, about providing beds for those in crisis, which we don't have right now. And then a team that is at this facility or facilities that can meet a person in crisis and do an evaluation. Those should be from an outside party. And that ongoing cost should be a part of that. And that funding would come from, the government sources that those things currently come from. But I'll stop there. Did I answer your question about number?
Yeah, there's not really a good number for it. The only thing I was trying to accomplish today was we're trying to tag some of this money out. And that's what I would like to do with this, is tag out to $6 million, because this, as you well know, John, I've worked with you, I've worked with a lot of people in this room on this issue.
Yes, sir.
And this issue is going to be ever changing, ever moving. And I don't think you're ever going to have a complete answer on any of this. But we are working towards that. I know with the hospital, we're working in conjunction with them, and they've been a very good partner so far. All of our entities from law enforcement, probation, court systems have worked with us very well to this point. Or we can just sit on our hands and do nothing. So that's why my motion will still stand. I would ask for this committee to tag $6 million for the mental health. It's not going to be spent at this time, but it's going to be earmarked for this mental health facility in conjunction. Like I said, there's so many moving parts on this, with being in conjunction with the community corrections, the jail, staffing. This money can be withdrawn at any time, but I'm asking for this money to be tagged for the mental health of Johnson County. That's what I'm asking.
And it's a regulatory eligible, right, Sheena?
Yes,
Totally regulatory.
yes.
I'd like to add too, that we have the support, I believe, in the sheriff sitting here. I believe we have the support of the sheriff, the prosecutor, and all of the judges regarding this. I think, may I say that, Sheriff? And I want to compliment your team. I would like to see it increase to 8 million.
Well, I've long been a proponent, and I've publicly addressed this numerous times, that we need a new community corrections facility. And one of the things that they're using nationally, which has been very productive in limiting recidivism and bringing people back to a productive lifestyle, is what they call therapeutic communities, wherein within community corrections, you have 12, 13, 14 people that have similar situations in their life and can somewhat associate with each other. And they've been very successful, even to the point of over 60% rate in success with this therapeutic community idea. And that's what I was hopeful, if we did a new community corrections facility, that we would incorporate that within the facility. I don't think from the county's perspective, we can be a mental health facility. That's just not feasible and would probably be cost prohibitive. We've got adult and child mental health, which addresses mental health problems on the general public. We also have our township trustees that work in that area with transitional housing and trying to provide those people some medical benefits in regard to that. My concern is, as these people enter the criminal justice system, most of them with misdemeanor or maybe level 6 felonies or whatever, it's costing us a lot of money. If you look at the jail right now and the number of people that are in it due to some form of mental health disorder, whether it be mild or acute, it's costing us a lot of money. And the real consequence is these people don't have a productive life. And I hate to attach numbers, even though I profess to be a numbers guy. but it's really the individual. I mean, how many people that are out there suffering today and suffering through incarceration or a diminished lifestyle that we can get back into productive society? And I spoke before of my 20-60-20 theory, in which we know that 20% of the people that are arrested, they've learned their lesson probably the first time, and they're not going to be a part of the system again. And conversely, you got 20% of the people that are arrested, they don't care, send them off to federal prison, state prison, give them an electric chair, they don't care. You're never going to rehabilitate those. But you got 60% of those people in the middle that really had the potential to be rehabilitated and put back into a productive lifestyle. And so if you use what we know now through this therapeutic community aspect, a 60% success rate, and you apply that to my 20-60-20 theory, all of a sudden you got 36 people out of every 100 that potentially you can put back into society in a productive manner. So I'd like to see the focus on this really more so in community corrections. And quite honestly, I think most of the people that we're going to run into that have a mental health problem are probably going to come through the criminal justice system, the way it's structured today, because there's not a lot of help out there for them outside of winding up going to jail and the sheriff housing them and trying to do what he can for them. So anyway, I'd like to see the emphasis on just community corrections, on the aspect of the therapeutic communities or whatever is available today to help in this regard.
Yeah, there've been so many changes through time. And I just want to state here that in my investigations and studies, that one of the initial charters of counties by our first state constitution was to provide a place for the indigent, and they called it farms. So those two things, indigent and farms, are outdated by a long shot, but they had the problem back in 1816. It's gone from county level to state level to federal level, back again. It's been bounced around. I think it's best addressed at this level. And so I again reiterate that I think that, you know, and Ron, to your point about it being part of the community corrections, of course, it needs to be part of the community corrections, but there's so many people that aren't in that system that need assessment. And that this CIT group is going to go out and encounter that isn't part of that penal system, and they still need just as much help or more so. You know, you've got vets with PTSD. That's certainly not criminal, but they end up with those I would say illogical, or how do I want to put it? You know, it's just not normal, yet they require some benefit from somebody other than the jailer. And I think that's why it needs to be separate, but yet the same. So I think this should be right adjacent to it and attached at the hip. Maybe not, maybe in the form of a place where people go this way or that way out of the squad car. I don't know, but those things yet to be determined. But that's my point about being part of the community corrections.
And the problem that you experience on the private sector, and we witness this today through adult and child mental health, is let's just say the sheriff's department response to this domestic problem, and one of the individuals is suffering some severe mental health problems. Well, they can't do anything with that individual unless they arrest them. I mean, they can't send them to an institution or to a medical facility. They can recommend, and we've witnessed this with adult and child mental health. We'll have people that they try to get to go there, but if they don't voluntarily go, we can't make them go. And there is the judges have a ability to recommend somebody and maybe do it through the legal process, but yes, go ahead.
I don't want to interrupt you. Andy Barnhart, Chief Deputy at the Sheriff's Office. I've been a part of some of these discussions from very early on, and indeed, law enforcement is a portion of that. I think what we've found is the probation department, courts, Sheriff's Office, on our own have formed a CIT team that has been the team that has responded to these type of incidents. So regardless of whether it's a criminal incident or not, the Sheriff's Office, police departments are going to be the ones that respond because of the crisis that has arisen from these individuals. So when we respond to those calls, we need to have the resources, both facilities and people. There's two major facets to that to respond to that. The facility is one portion of it, which would be a no-brainer with some of this funding, but the team is the other portion of that. So indeed, we can't always and shouldn't introduce them into the criminal justice system. Quite often, we're just the person that's there to help. Law enforcement is called upon to do a wide variety of things, whether it's first aid type response, and this is mental health first aid is what this is. So by having a place and a team to refer them to, under certain circumstances, we can force them to go. If we have the ability to do an immediate detention to the hospital, but that's a very small way to take care of something that's happening in that immediate need. It doesn't help any long term. Okay, so I think the concept here that we were looking for, and as the team has developed over the past several years, long before any of this funding became available, was that we had people from probation, community corrections, the Sheriff's Office, the police departments that are getting trained and can respond to these things, but then we need that next place to get them to refer to. And I think all of those agencies are going to have a portion of that. But I think ideally, in an ideal world, we would love to have an independent department that could handle all of those things. But if not, if we were able to contribute to that and the part that's missing is the funding for that, contribute to that with these people. We have a sheriff's deputy that handles that. We have a probation officer. We have a community corrections field officer that handle it right now. So our agencies that aren't primarily responsible for that are contributing to that right now. And if we have the funding to independently do that with both the facility and the people, that's, I think, ideally in my mind, where this type of discussion about the funding would be able to set that up. And then you can contribute to it long term through uses like the lit, through community corrections. And because it does address issues with people that end up in the jail over and over again, then that's where your jail lit can come into play, because that is a portion of it. So that, in my opinion, that's what it is. I think that our CIT team has put together a rough concept of some budgetary ideas of what this could cost, just not from a facility standpoint, because none of us know anything about that, but from a personnel standpoint over the next few years and what we would love to see happen. And so if $6 million, and I don't know where exactly that number came from, is if we're talking about the building, the facility portion, that's great. But the other part, if we can earmark that money right now, then we can say, okay, now we're not taking a sheriff's deputy, a probation officer away from their jobs, because we have to have people to handle these sort of things. We can earmark that money, then that would be beneficial to the county as a whole. And I don't think anybody disagrees that that's something that needs to happen sometime for the benefit of the county.
Thank you, Andy.
So how do you handle the situation now where you go, as an example I gave earlier, maybe domestic problem?
Sure.
And one of the individuals needs help. How do you handle that individual at that point? What are you able to do?
Well, if there's no criminal matter,
Right.
and quite often, sometimes even if there is that always the best course of action? And we've had to learn both on our own and then through some of the CIT training that we're going through on how to handle those things. Right now, because we have developed this team, we call the team, they come out and we hand it off to them. So before it was one of two things. You either had a criminal offense, you took them to jail, or you had the person's a threat to themselves or someone else, and we would take them to a hospital for immediate detention. That was it. And that's up to 24 hours. Quite frequently, it was 4 or 5 hours. They would do a telepsych and they'd be back out on the street and we'd be dealing with them before the end of the shift. So that was all we had before. By developing this team, we now have a group of people that can respond. And we have worked with adult and child as well as part of that
Right.
to respond to the scene, deal with them right there, give them the resources they need. And then if we had something like a short-term treatment facility, we're not talking about someone's gonna be housed here for 2 years. We're talking about, this is a place where they can go, well, we can address their immediate needs and then figure out where they need to go from that point on. So we've already been doing that on our own.
But how do you get them, to go to that treatment
It's all
facility?
about talking to them. It's all about talking to them. These folks that we have done an amazing job of, through training and through experience of learning what it is that these people need and the type of help that they can get, whether it's substance abuse or mental health, other mental health issues, and sometimes they're hand in hand, and learning, spending the time with them. You can't take a patrol officer off the street for 3 hours, which is what we've had to do sometimes in the past. But this specialized team, we can do that. They can spend the time they need to figure out what it is that these individuals need to help them.
But the resource that you're missing, and I think John adequately defined it, is that if they need to be in a bed, for lack of a better word, and the bed means many things,
Yes.
and the facility that bed is in means many things, you have no place to send them except at Columbus and
Anywhere but Johnson County.
Yeah, we have limited options and those fill up really quick. A lot of times we're told there's no beds available. Vala Vista, we've done sometimes, some of the various hospitals, but quite often there's no space
And it's
there's no
not-
follow-up either. We just hand it off to them and so the CIT team has also been working on follow-up and finding out, okay, now it's not just catch and release, now it's somebody else's problem. They're following up with them a week, a month, 2 months, 6 months later to find out what's going on with this case. And we've used the term navigator throughout the jail, but that's really what they're doing through this whole, the whole situation is trying to figure out, okay, not only are we dealing with them right now, but we're figuring out what they need long-term. And that helps us to not have to keep responding to the same, it is a law enforcement issue with that, because we have to go back to the same houses over and over.
And this isn't unique to Johnson County. I mean,
It's the
all
entire nation.
over TV has been about Marion County CIT. Do
Yes.
they have a facility they send them to? Have they breached this issue?
That's questionable too.
Right, everyone's still trying to figure this out, and we are actually, Johnson County, by developing this team, by having the experts, and I'm not the expert on this, we have the people that have done this. We are at the forefront of the entire state. Other counties are looking to Johnson County at what we're doing, sort of what we've just done on our own, because we have people that care in the leadership positions that have cared to make this happen, that they're now all coming to us. They can tell you the demographics of the trainings we've held. We've had people from the entire state come to train in Johnson County at our training facility to learn what it is we're doing now with just the little bit we have that we've kind of cobbled together. And we would love to be that forerunner in nationwide and how to deal with this crisis. And we started that on our own. We just have to keep the foot on the gas pedal.
Is this the team back here?
This is the team. These are the people that know the meat and potatoes about what I'm talking about. Yes.
I think what we
Thank
want
you.
to do is have Wayne Burgess, Johnson County Sheriff, just so they can explain to you what they do, what Jimmy does daily, how this process works. Allow them to do it. We kind of got into this, but it seems like Johnson County, we wait for somebody else to develop it. Why can't we be the people, the front runner to develop it? I mean, we talk about this at all the sheriff's associations, but let them talk so you can hear them.
Hi, Deputy Mark, Johnson County Sheriff's Office. So my daily role as a community liaison with mental health, I go through all the calls from the day prior, or I respond to the scene. When I go through all those calls, I log those calls, I forward those on to the adult and child crisis team. They will do a follow-up, and then they send me that follow-up information. Then myself, Shannon, and Chad will also follow up with that individual or the family to assist them, to make sure that they're getting the help that they need. I will tell you, out of all the calls that I've been tracking since January 1st this year, we've had 90 mental health calls. Out of those 90 calls, 5 of those probably could go to jail. And actually, as some of the juveniles did for battery, but that's not where they needed to be. They needed mental health help. With our CIT program, we are training officers from all over the state because there's only 12 counties in the state right now that's NAMI, which is the National Alliance of Mental Illness, certified through their program. So we're getting people from Allen County, DeKalb County, Rising Sun, come into our class so that we can train officers. And the sheriff has dedicated and saying that he's going to send every officer with our department into the CIT program, along with Jim Ison from Greenwood Police Department is sending all their officers as well. And I'll let Shannon kind of talk a little bit about the CIT program real quick, unless you have any other questions for me.
Shannon Chambers, Johnson County Probation. So with our training, it is a 40-hour long training, 40-hour week. 36 of those hours are in the classroom with various instructors. It's not just one instructor training. We have lived experience people come in. So that's parents of children that have mental illness. We have drug addiction come in. We have officer who has PTSD. We also have a veteran who comes in and talks about traumatic brain injury as well. As doctors from the Veterans Hospital, Bella Vista, all of the hospitals are on board as well with our CIT, and they sit on our committee, our steering committee as well. And within that 40-hour week, 36 of those are in the classroom. 4 hours is to shadow someone, whether it be Community North with their psych area or with adult and child with their crisis unit. So the officers are getting a full week-long certification in order to be CIT certified. And as Jimmy said, we've had several counties contact us and say, hey, can we send our people to your training? Any questions?
Deputy Mark again, Johnson County. I just wanted to add just two quick things and I'll be done. 1 in 5 adults in the United States have a mental illness. 7 of 10 youth involved in the justice system have a mental illness. And it is on the rise. And I think it's because the stigma is starting to break and people are starting to talk more about their problems. And it's on the rise, and it's going to continue to be on the rise for a long time coming, I'm afraid. So I feel like if we can be the leaders, like the sheriff said and the chief said, if we could be the leaders in the state, we can make a big difference in our community for the mental health. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Lori Myers, Community Corrections Juvenile Division. I don't want to detract anything at all with the needs of the adult system because it is critical. But I feel like that as a youth advocate in our juvenile justice system, that I need to kind of highlight what Deputy Ingmark had said about the youth. We're at a really critical situation with our kids. That we know that all of the children that are coming and being detained in our center have adverse childhood experience scores, meaning they've experienced severe trauma. And we literally earlier this year had a little guy under the age of 12 knocking on our door and asking to come in. He was barefoot. He didn't have a criminal charge. We sent him home. He did have a criminal charge by the next morning because of the events that followed suit. So when we're talking about beds, when we're talking about services, I understand, when we speak of community corrections, we're talking about adults, but I need to have a voice here for the children. So please, I'm happy to talk to you, any of you at any time about, as I'm sure Angela would, Christy Bruther would, but we do have a crisis with our youth. I think people like, well, there are adults, there's grandmothers or somebody that's going to take these kids and get them to where they need to be. It isn't happening. So please welcome the juvenile justice system fully to this discussion when it comes to beds and services for mental health, because they are not being treated in the way that I think people think that children should be managed. So you have any questions for me or?
No, Lori, thank you very much. And all of you that have stepped up. I see this assessment area here as being an open door and having several doors for entry, not just Ron, you'd said community corrections, and I think we need to think of the entire community when we look at this assessment facility. So it's assessment and care and all wrapped up. But thank you.
Kevin, John, I mean, it's not just people sitting back here, it's also members of Johnson Ward.
Yes.
Try to.
No, I know we're working with them. I mean, you sit on that same committee that I sit on with them. So, and that's, I'll go back to my original after all the testimony, and I thank everybody for doing that. I'll go back to my original thing. I'm just trying to, with the commitment the county would make with this, would give maybe a JMH, another provider, the ability to step in and say, yeah, we're willing to work with you because you're willing to put your feet in the fire. Without doing that, it's all just hot air. And I think if this committee takes it upon themselves to set this money aside and give us the opportunity to go put a program together with this in mind, with a mental health facility, with beds that are readily available, it would be a huge step for not only the county, but surrounding counties. And like Dwayne said, let's lead, let's not follow. Let's not be behind on this. Let's get in front of it. So my motion, I would assume.
Well, I'll start by making a motion for $8 million for mental.
Well,
health.
let mine first die because I made one earlier when I first started. So
You have a second? That motion dies. I'll entertain another motion.
Motion to assign $8 million from the ARPA funding for mental health.
I would second that.
Clarification, that is regulatory, but
Correct.
Further question, is that for
Brick and mortar.
The 8 million is for facilities or?
It's going to be facilities. What?
I was asked that question also by text, so.
Oh, yes, this would be for a facility that would be in conjunction. Like I said, this is a developing plan on trying to work with community corrections, mental health facility. There's a whole, I'm going to need a lot of help on this, put it that way. This is a huge undertaking to put something together like this, but it would be in conjunction with the jail and community corrections. It would be a facility with beds in it. We talked about transitional housing. I am not a professional on this. I would seek the professional help on this to figure this out. But what we've seen and in meetings with the hospital, we see people come in, they get kicked out. There's no place for them to go other than back through the system again.
But we have to be careful in as much as we can't become a private provider. Keep that in mind that you're using taxes. You can't become a private
Yeah, and
provider. What we're doing now is, and the CIT is great in that regard. They're assessing these people and keeping them out of the system and a lot of times and being able to direct them to get the help they need. And that is so important what you guys are doing. But we can't, when we talk about a facility and we talk about beds, it has to be for people that have come through the system. And it can't be, we can't be providing mental health services for the private sector with public tax dollars.
That motion be with conjunction about.
This is in conjunction, this is a facility we're looking at, bricks and mortar. The operational would not be within a county division entity created. It would be with an outside entity, say a JMH, a Franciscan community, whoever would come in. Iris, I know we're working with Iris, which is another mental health provider. All that, you can go to all the mental health professionals that we set on, from the JRAC committee that we set on to the hospital committee we set on. I mean, this has been in depth. CIT's involved in all that. We need the bricks and mortar. We have no place to take these people for treatment other than usually out of the county, which is eating up resources from the sheriff's department to drive people to the north side. I know they drove people to Fort Wayne to find a bed. Those are the things, we don't have that here. We did a demographic study, we've got it at 25 beds. So that's what we're looking at. It would be a facility with 25 beds with supporting staff provided by others, outside entity. And that, the only reason I'm asking is to build the bricks and mortar to give the opportunity that I can now go to these providers and say, here's what we're going to do. What kind of deal are you going to work with us on the inside and provide the care that we need? So that's what this is for.
And I think the word there that we need to really focus on is need. And I on Barb this morning, I woke up this morning at 1:37 and stayed awake the rest of the day over some things that were on my heart. We have two kinds of people in the world today with attitudes of I can, I will, I want to, and I have to, but I need a little help. And then we have those that say I can't because it's physically or mentally impossible. Those people need our help. Then we have those that say I don't want to, and I don't have to because I'm being enabled by someone or something else. And those seem to be the people we throw all the money at in this country. And I think if we're going to do this in Johnson County, that we focus on this first group and we quit throwing the money away on those people that don't care. And I think we've done a good start in that. I think, and not tooting anybody's horn, but I think our school programs working with the youth do exactly what Lori's talking about. We're out there trying to help the youth. Those are the ones that need the help. And they need to help the most because they're not getting it from their parents or guardians or those that are supposed to care for them. And if we're going to do anything but those that truly need the help, I don't want any part of it. If we're going to do it like the rest of this country is doing and the nation's doing and just throwing money at people that don't care and don't have to because we're enabling them, then let's not get this thing started. And I appreciate everything you guys have brought forward. I believe in it. And I hope we look at it that way from this point going forward.
Kevin, will you restate your motion, please? So I,
Johnny made the motion.
John, will you?
That $8 million from the ARPA funds be assigned out of the regulatory portion for facility for mental health. Facility or facilities adjoining.
I'll second that.
Already did.
Oh, you did?
We were in discussion again.
I have a motion and a second.
And I want to caveat this with just
Any
one
further?
one more thing. If this doesn't work out, for whatever reason, I want to be full forward with everybody. I mean, there's been a lot of effort put in. There's going to be a lot more effort put going forward from this point on. If this does not work out, then this money, I'm not going to try to get into this money until I have a definitive plan. And I mean, there's a lot of good people in this room and the hospitals that we're working with. Until I can come back with a definitive plan, I would just like this money to be earmarked. I'm not going to get into it. The development, the design that we talked about with the money on the highway property, that's going to be, I'm going to give you square footages and I'm going to work on the internal part as we go forward. But it gives me the ability to go to these people and say, here's where Johnson County is going and this is what we're doing. So just wanted to make sure it's not going to be, I'm not going to go out and spend $8 million tomorrow morning. So,
Understood.
but it's just an earmark for it. So.
Thanks, sir. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Before we adjourn, we're moving forward with a number of things, but again, I go back to what didn't happen at our previous meeting because we got into extensive discussions about the campus, that we have the opportunity to come forward with any additional suggestions of the $20 million bucket. Because we've never got there yet.
Now it's 12.
I'm sorry.
Now it's 12.
Well, yeah. Well, it's less than that with all the other potential regulatory, but you know, we've not got all, I've not heard, you've not heard my additional idea. I've not heard other additional ideas from other than mental health and campus issues as it relates to health department. So I think our next meeting perhaps should be more, provide a portion of it for us to present other ideas. Is that okay?
What, at this point in time, we have not come up with an agenda for the next meeting, but all those things will be considered as we bring that next agenda
I mean, we
forward.
need to prepare if we're going to do that.
We can go through an email. I mean, if you want to send your concerns to Sheena, let her cite.
Right.
If you
That's what I
want
was
to
gonna
do
say.
that, ma'am.
Yeah, we come up with some ideas of what we want to organize, and then we'll put it in agenda form so that we make sure we stay on track a little more. We did a little better today.
Not really. We started kind of rough.
But we're getting there. So this is all new to us, and I appreciate everybody on this board and the work that's been put in, and I just think that we just have to try to organize a little better and keep moving forward so we can get this taken care of in the proper way. So we will definitely look at all that. Councilman Deere. Yes, sir.
So thank you for the crisis intervention team, folks being here in discussion. We each have this, and it's labeled proposal, and then in here though, and there's some budgets and estimates. Is there any action on this? What are we considering a proposal of here?
There was some discussion in we had to kind of go back in Rob's notes. There was some discussion at a commissioners meeting about the mental health and the crisis intervention team. And that's what Commissioner Walls was recalling, but I don't think anything ever moved forward from there to the council to look at some appropriation for that. Is that something that you think the council would entertain if the intervention team could come forward maybe and have some discussion with the council?
Well, I think there's always an opportunity to hear a conversation. The meeting minutes that I found from our February meeting, there was a motion or lack of a better term, a motion from John Myers, Jonathan T here at an ARPA meeting to, I think, earmark up to $300,000, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how that landed. And if that's what resulted in this proposal.
We didn't appropriate to ARPA.
I don't think you
No.
did an ordinance
No,
because
it's
you
for
didn't have a
CIP.
specific thing you want to spend it on.
We just talked
It
about it.
hasn't been-
I think it was 300,000, wasn't it, Rob?
Is that something we want to entertain to put on the next agenda, maybe to have some discussion on that?
Or do we-
Or ARPA, or is that something that would just be an appropriation through council?
Well, do you know what you're gonna use it on?
Yeah, I think it was basically salary based. Was that correct?
This was just a rough idea that was put together for some rough numbers that maybe proposal isn't the best term to use, a rough concept of some ideas of what that, what I was talking about as part of the personnel being part of it. We could put together something much more concrete as far as that goes. I think the idea is if we could do it out of ARPA versus going to the council at budget time and saying, okay, now we need these 3-4 positions created so that we can have our positions back, so to speak, rather than doing that, if we can do it out of ARPA funding, and then we could fund it through that. I think that was
I think we were going to kickstart this thing off with like a $300,000 seed money.
Yes.
And then we were going to build it into the council's budget
Right.
going forward.
It was just to get it off the ground.
We wanted to get it off the ground because we can use this as regulatory funding.
That wasn't an immediate proposal for the next year budget. This was a kickstart and then for.
This was,
future
I think it was based off of a 2-year salary basis, I think for 2 people. So it might have to be
Well,
relooked at. Some
and-
concrete evidence with Jimmy, if you can put something together, I guess.
And in their black portfolio in front of us. They have on one page some numbers.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah, I saw that.
I knew we talked about.
I
it.
I think that's an item we can definitely add to the agenda of the next ARPA committee meeting then. Is that
We
what
want
we're
on the
saying?
next ARPA committee.
Yes.
Maybe
That
set
will
a
be one
date
thing.
for that.
Not yet, we won't.
We have three.
No, we can't today. Too many schedules we have to deal with. But we will get that. It'll go out by email like we did before.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Everybody good with that? It's coming up on the next agenda along with some other suggestions that we'll receive by email.
Two things to it, but yeah.
Yeah, 2 or 3 maybe, but no, more or 3.
No more than 3.
We'll do the best we can. And a motion and a second for adjournment.
We're all out of here.